All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session of our Student Ethics Symposium. My name is Brian Birch, and I'm the director of the Center for the Study of Ethics here at UVU. And we're very pleased to have students from our communication program here to do a panel on social media manipulations. And I have the privilege of turning the time over to two of my favorite people on campus, Stevie Munz and Leah Hernandez. They teach in the communication department and are also associated with the Center for the Study of Ethics. And it's a delight to work with both of them. So thank you all. Just as a reminder, we're streaming this session primarily because of the bad weather. And we knew that it would be challenging for people to get on campus. So we appreciate everybody's flexibility. We appreciate the audience tuning in via live stream. And we just wanted to let you know that all of these sessions are being recorded as well, so you can tune in after the event and pose questions and follow up with us. And we certainly plan to follow up as well. So without further ado, I will turn the time over to Leah and Stevie to introduce the students and our topic.
Leah, you want to go ahead and introduce the group?
Absolutely. All right. Thank you all for being here with us. Dr. Stevie Munz and I are thrilled to introduce our fantastic media ethics student team with you all. So the panel of our title is entitled Social Media Manipulations, and our three presenters, all three communication majors, are Hannah Rowntree, Katie Barker, and Tyre B. Hilton. So our students will go ahead and present their work that will talk a little bit about citizen journalism, deepfakes, and the like. And then Dr. Stevie Munz and I are happy to moderate the Q&A session afterwards. Take it away, y'all.
Hi, everybody. I'm here to introduce kind of our presentation. We will be talking about social media manipulations, and I will go into depth about citizen journalism and the traumas that come along with that. We'll also be talking about the beauty standards and how over the years we've had a lot more editing apps, and influencers and celebrities have been able to manipulate their audiences either with products or their own social media posts, so on and so forth. Before we get started, I have a few questions I would like you guys to think about as we go through our presentation, because these questions will go back to the TARES test, which is used to kind of monitor things ethically and to make sure everything is in check. The first question I have is, do these messages represent the whole truth? Question 2 is, was the information left out in order to misdirect the persuadee? 3, by putting out this message, am I perpetuating harm? Question 4, is this a cause or a product something I would personally advocate for? 5, does the information adequately inform the audience? 6, is the message unfair or to the audience? And 7, does this message take into account the special needs or interests of the target public? Would I feel this message was equitable if presented to me or someone I love? 9, have the message's potential negative impacts have been taken into account? And the last one is, do these messages help or hinder public trust? And I will now turn the time over to Catherine to discuss beauty standards and editing apps.
Awesome. If we could change the slide, that'd be great. Okay. So our first case study is about using technology to manipulate bodies. And what better example to give than the queens of beauty themselves, the Kardashians. The Kardashians are known not only to manipulate and change their bodies through plastic surgery, but they are also known for some pretty gnarly Photoshop fails. Here are a couple examples in this. In this picture, you can see on the left is Chloe. And this is a picture that she posted to Instagram. You can see, and then on the right is a picture from the actual video footage from their reality TV show. And you can just see the subtle differences, the change in the length of the eyelashes, the brightening of the eyes, the eyebrows are a little bit different, the change in the shape of the face. The next picture is Chloe again. And you can see in the left photo, you can see kind of like the unnatural indent in her leg where she's tried to enlarge her butt in order to like make it look more beautiful, I guess. And then in the right photo, you see that she's kind of tried to carve in her waist a little bit to make it slimmer. And last but not least, we have Kim in the last pictures. And she was called out by this TikToker. You can see the TikToker in one of the pictures because she feminized her trap muscles in a picture posted to Instagram. But in the photo shoot, they took a video and you can clearly see that she's much more ripped than she lets on. Now, there are many more examples of celebrities that are not Kardashians and even male celebrities that change their bodies and alter their bodies to look a certain way due to the beauty standards. But with all of these examples of fails, I began to wonder how often they get away with their photoshopping and editing skills. So I went on a hunt for the best body editing apps. And here's what I found. So in the top left, there's the Body app. Underneath that is the Peachy app. Pretty Up app is next. Then you go back to the top is the Everlook app. Down at the bottom with the crown is Perfect Me. Then there's Beauty Plus and the 2 UCam apps, obviously the Facetune app. And then the last but not least is the Photoshop app. And of course, because I'm curious and I couldn't just stop at knowing what apps people use to edit their bodies. I had to try it myself. So this next picture is me on a trip in California with my family. But really, this is me. And so the other picture was me with a thinner waist, enhanced boobs, thinner legs, blush on my cheeks, contour on my face, a tad bit more height, and a tattoo on my arm just for fun. And I was astounded how easy it was to manipulate my body to fit the beauty standards of today. So the question is why? Why do we or should we care? Why does it matter if somebody manipulates their body to look a certain way? Well, the first answer is obviously we can't change what other people do. And I'm sure they have a reason for what they post. What we can change is our awareness of body editing and making sure that what we personally post is truthful and authentic. Because the sad truth is that in a global study done by Dove, the body wash company, only 4% of women consider themselves beautiful. And in an article written by Juliana Strano, she is of the opinion that this is because of the unrealistic beauty standards that we have in society today. She said, "What does it mean to be beautiful? This is a question with an ever-changing answer. In our society, women are expected to fit with the constantly changing beauty standards that have been set for them. In our world today, beauty standards for women are high, almost unattainable to reach." In a study done in 2013, Emily Balcetis, Shanna Cole, Maria B. Schellberg, and Mark Alex set out to measure the awareness of ideal beauty standards and its effects on the self-esteem of women. They measured awareness of ideal standards for beauty via 2 approaches. The first, with 55 undergraduate women, they self-reported their general propensity to be aware of society's thin ideal standard. As a second approach, they measured visual attention orienting to ideal standards. So they covertly measured the participants' eye movements of their peers' ideal standards. Anyway, so after the study, they concluded and found evidence that awareness of the ideal standards can adversely affect self-esteem among women, regardless of their actual body weight and shape. And then if you'll click to the last slide, Hannah, perfect. These pictures and these ideals can be detrimental to the self-esteem of women around the world, especially when they are fake and when they are photoshopped. So be aware of the technological manipulations that could have affected the pictures that you are comparing yourself to, and censor your own content to be truthful and authentic as well.
Awesome, thank you so much. Okay, before I start on my slides, I just want to give a little bit of a trigger warning. What I'm going to be discussing is quite heavy, and it can be particularly triggering for BIPOC people, especially Black people. So the case study that I went through was resisting through citizen journalism, and it was analyzing the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020 through Twitter. This case study really liked how they defined citizen journalism as a tool of resistance. And then it talked about the different successful and powerful effects it had on the Black Lives Matter movement. And as many of us have probably seen, the murder of George Floyd was captured by ordinary people and posted online. And because of their courage to step in and film, there could be no intellectual debate on what happened to this man. But I want to bring an intersectional lens to this conversation as a Black woman. Despite your political party or whether or not you believe racism still exists in the US, many people have seen the videos depicting the deaths of George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery while he was being chased down on his jog, or more recently, Tyre Nicholas. These videos go viral online thanks to social media, but is that always a good thing? So I want to shed a light on like a little bit of nuance to these conversations to explain how the manipulation from posting, filming, and sharing these videos can be to individuals. I'm going to share a quote by Ashton Berry, and she can just describe these concepts a lot better than I can. And she says, if you need to watch or share the deaths of Black people, you're affirming the internalization of two biases. One, that victims and survivors, especially Black people, cannot be trusted to tell the truth. And two, that the degradation of Black bodies is normal and entertaining. It's 2023, and if you're still watching or sharing these kinds of videos, in a way, it's participating in a modern day voyeuristic tradition of lynching picnics. In my opinion, sharing death or using shock and awe as a strategy does not sustain movement work. There are multiple ways to do social change. So just keep that in mind before you post or share something on social media. Just a little personal experience for myself. The 2020 Black Lives Matter movement completely changed my life. I grew up in Utah. I'm adopted. I grew up in the church. And even though I had experienced racist things, I kind of just like pretend they didn't happen. I didn't know how to handle them. And I felt like I had to conform to a standard that Utah would place on me. So I didn't believe in racism. But this movement completely changed my life. And seeing those videos is like the reason why I'm here today as like an advocate for community building and being a social justice strategist. But there is a downside. My mental health completely deteriorated. I would have like intense panic attacks all the time. Even to this day, I'm deathly afraid of cops. If I get pulled over for something, my body goes into shock. I start shaking. I can't breathe. And you know, these videos are mass spread. So imagine all the other people that are watching this, that it could happen to them. And so let me just sum it up with one last quote from the same woman. She says, if you need to witness violent Black mutilation in order to see us or our humanity, you probably need to read a book. Oh, that was a good one. However, there is a spectrum of showing the full experience of humanity. Photo, video, visual journalism is a very powerful medium, like in regard to like war photography or journalism, trauma. And if the mothers of these Black people who are dying are asking us to share these videos so that justice can be met, of course there's nuance to these conversations. But before we post something or shoot something, we need to keep in mind the family members who have given consent to these contents. So here are just a few more questions that we can ask ourselves before we shoot something on film. One, when is it appropriate to publish images of victims with graphic footage? Two, is there a right to know? Is it a need to know? Or is it just a desire to know? And three, will this cause more harm? And I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong answer to these things. That's the case with social justice movements and wanting to create change. It is, and like as communication majors or it's aspiring journalists or people that want to tell stories, these issues are complex and messy. And that's why we need to think before we film something, post something, or share something.
Thank you both so much for your case studies. Moving on into kind of the media ethics side of it, what concepts have we learned from this class that will help apply to these cases? One of my favorite concepts that we talked about is the TARES test. The TARES test was developed in 2001 by Baker and Morrison, and the purpose of this test is to kind of evaluate how businesses, people kind of portray themselves, their campaigns, their social media posts, and just kind of their overall presence. So the test is separated into 5 different parts. T stands for truthfulness, A stands for authenticity, R stands for respect, E stands for equity, and S is for social responsibility. Next slide, please. So why is this test important? For me, this test kind of keeps people in check and holds them accountable. You're able to kind of find, when you apply the TARES test, to these social media posts, you are able to find out, are these people being genuine, and do I want to see their content, or do I want to participate in their content if it's not being truthful? I feel like more people need to evaluate the TARES test and use it in their daily lives. So kind of going back to the questions I started with, there are many questions that apply to both Hannah and Catherine's case studies, especially when it comes to, the Kardashians. They are really never truthful. They may say that, oh, I work out and this is why my body looks like this. And when in reality, it's like they have plastic surgeons on speed dial. They edit their photos as well. And then for Hannah's case study, question 10, do the messages help or hinder public trust? Because for these people who are posting these, are they keeping in mind of the families of these victims? Are they keeping in mind what this can do to the community as well once they are posting it? So when you answer these questions, the answers will always vary. However, if you're answering no, most of the time that means that they will fail this test. And the TARES test will always just help keep people in check and help people be accountable. Next slide, please. So why is this important? Why are these case studies important to us and to our audience today? Please be aware of what you're posting, who you follow, and what you're sharing on the internet, and be aware of the audiences that could be harmed or see these posts. You may have a small following, but it's the internet. Everyone will always see what you are posting, and just be genuine. With your photo edits, we don't need to be editing our photos to look like someone we're not. Our bodies, these are our only bodies. And just always be aware of all the communities that your post will, just be aware of the communities as well who can see your content as well. And so now that concludes our presentation, and we will turn to questions from the chat.
All right, awesome. Thank you all. That was wonderful. We were so excited to hear from you all on these really important case studies. Like we mentioned earlier, Dr. Stevie Munz and I do have a few questions that we would love to discuss with you all. And we're also happy to share questions with y'all as well as they come in through the chat. So the first question is, should we have universal or mandated disclaimers on photos, on social media and advertising that have been airbrushed, edited, photoshopped, so on and so forth? And what do y'all think are some of the ethical implications of having such disclaimers mandated or not mandated?
I guess I can take that one. I think it's hard because when you mandate certain things like that, it kind of takes away people's agency, their ability to choose what they're putting out, and like their ability to kind of hide, I guess, like what they're airbrushing or editing and all that kind of stuff. I do, however, think that it would be beneficial. I think for a lot of people that get on social media, and for myself personally, I get on and I look at these beautiful bodies of beautiful people, and I think, oh, why does my body not look like that? And for a long time, you know, growing up, that caused a lot of issues in my own life. And then I've seen it happen in the lives of the people around me, and specifically my sister, who struggles with an eating disorder. And it just, I think for, you know, for a lot of different reasons, it would be helpful to realize, okay, maybe like this person is not being 100% honest. And if they have to tell you that, then, you know, you obviously can distinguish between what's real and what's fake. I think it could also create an issue if people, even if it was a mandate and people are still not following the mandate, I think that could create another issue where you're like, oh, this is supposed to be real, but it's, you know, it's not. Anyway, so kind of my thoughts.
Thank you, Katie. Tyra or Hannah, do y'all have any other thoughts you'd like to share on that question?
I guess like when it comes to body editing, I think that will help girls kind of understand, you know, even these celebrities and influencers and whatnot, you know, having their photos edited as well. I think it just will just keep kind of just lost my train of thought, but I think it would just help people understand, you know, there's going to be edited content out there. So don't just kind of look and kind of do your research before kind of judging people. Why don't I look like that? But I think those disclaimers will help.
I also think that, sorry, I'm just, there we go. It's hard. I feel like mandating those kinds of things, I feel like you'd have to like do it on a larger scale with bigger stakeholders, like on a legislative scale. That'd be kind of difficult. I think just because like our world is changing, communication is like ever revolving or evolving, and like with AI coming out, like maybe like proposed like coursework in schools starting at a young age, especially for girls, of like what's real and what's not, and not to compare ourselves. I think that would be something that would be good, just because it's hard. It's all over the place, and you can't tell like who's being honest and who's not. And kids like younger and younger are having smartphones or on social media, and they don't have any kind of guidance. So
yeah, thanks, y'all. Dr. Munz also had a really good follow-up question to your comments so far. And she asked, you know, we discuss a lot about women in the media, of course. Did y'all notice anything in your research about the editing of men's bodies, whether we're thinking about weightlifting culture, bodybuilding culture, muscle dysmorphia, and things of that nature?
Yeah, Tyra was one that, as I was going through my case study, she brought that up, and she was like telling me about like a couple fails, like especially Photoshop fails that she had heard of. And I looked a little bit into it. I didn't look in, which, you know, this is a great opportunity to, you know, more research and figure out more about this type of thing, but I didn't look into the effects of how that affects men and like how that affects the way that they feel about themselves. But I think that would be very like helpful and good. I know there was a couple Photoshop, you know, fails that I did find for men. And I think, you know, it does create, again, for men, this ideal standard of what the human body should look like ideally. And if you can't or aren't up to that standard, if you can't get there or aren't there, then it can create, I'm sure, some sense like of insecurity. So yeah, that'll be something I'll have to look into more.
going off of that, Katie, I actually take back what I said when I said that we should have like coursework for girls specifically. I'm like, wait, this affects men too. This affects everybody, okay, even non-binary people. So I take that back. I think there should be something like at a young age for all kids. And I just remembered from a class that I took from Stevie like last semester, and it did talk about like male body image and how much they struggle with like you see toys, like kids are like kids are given toys that are like muscular with like huge chests and stuff. And so I'll send that source over to you, Katie, and then the next time we present, we can get a little deeper into that.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we talk about in our classes all the time, right? Whether it's media ethics, intercultural communication, gender and communication, media representation. When Stevie and I always ask, what are your earliest memories of gender? What do we immediately think about, right? Our dolls, our toys, like G.I. Joe dolls, relatively compared to Barbies and so on and so forth. So yeah, just a little extra nugget to think about. Dr. Munz, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think too, it's such a great connection because we think of body image issues as like thinning the body, toning the body, slimming the body. But then there's this other side to it where it's about making the body bigger, but in this very specific way through a specific kind of muscle structure, a specific form of muscle structure, a specific style of muscle structure.
And they're so good.
Yeah, he has a Nerf gun. And with that, there's like an appropriateness on whose body gets to look like that too, right? And not everyone's body gets to look muscular and toned and fit in this way. And so I think then the intersections with eating disorder, healthy eating culture, supplement culture, workout culture, right? It just goes on and on and on and on. And we're like programmed and we're ingrained in it. And so I do wonder about then the intersections of like social media and other platforms that we're getting all this information from.
Yeah, and we have another great question coming in from one of our viewers that relates to this topic as well. And they ask, what are your thoughts on how social media manipulation affects our fundamental identity, particularly as it relates to disassociation?
Could you ask that question one more time?
Yes, absolutely. What are your thoughts on how social media manipulation affects our fundamental identities, particularly as it relates to disassociation?
Great question.
Serious. And remind me, this may just be me being ignorant, but disassociation, is that just where you have like kind of a disconnect from self of like who you truly are, or?
Yes, yeah, I believe so.
Okay, awesome. I think in a lot of ways it does, because I think you see yourself and you see, you know, like what you look like and the person that you are, you see like you know your internal thoughts and you see the good that you do every day. But for whatever reason, sometimes when you get on that social media, you see the ideals of what you should look like. And if you're not there, and I know, at least for me, sometimes when I see these perfect people, I also think that they're perfectly kind and that they're successful and they have good jobs and that they're, you know, like all these other good things that now I'm not. Because if I don't look like them, then I'm not kind. I'm probably not, you know, successful. I'm not ever going to be successful. So it's kind of just those negative thoughts. But it for sure like disassociates you from who you really are. And like your body is beautiful and you are a beautiful person and you have been given gifts and talents that other people haven't. And so it's just kind of those kind of shifting that mindset as you're going through social media and realizing that, you know, sometimes these things are not always real and they're, you know, fabricated. And so, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I would love to add to that. Identity. Oh my goodness. This is my first year of actually like embracing, embodying, and like accepting who I am, my Blackness, my queerness, my history, my ancestry. I grew up LDS and I grew up here in Utah. And Utah's unique epistemological and social isolation creates like the most interesting culture. And so it's not just like famous like big stars like the Kardashians on Instagram that perpetuate certain beauty standards. But if you get into like the kind of like the Mormon mommy blogger bubble, all the like famous Utah people are white, super tiny, blonde. They bounce back after having 5 babies and they have amazing bodies, amazing, but whatever that means, you know what I'm saying? And I don't look like that at all. And I grew up here. And so it's like a constant battle of like hating myself and wanting to like starve myself and change myself to fit a certain mold that would never ever work for me. And then just like to bring in a social impact lens about dissociation, I think also it's so interesting, like what are they called? The echo chambers that we create. We can create those online with who we follow. And so before I had like my racial awakening, I pretty much only followed like conservative leaning people. And so if something happened in the Black community, I would only hear it from those lenses. And so I'd have to dissociate from like what my Black brothers and sisters were saying. And I'm like, oh, it's not real, you know, and it's super interesting. You have to be so careful.
Also, I'll kind of add to this discussion as well. From 2020 to about like 2021, about halfway through, I took a social media break. I deleted all the apps on my phone and it was fantastic. I wasn't comparing myself. I just wasn't going down this rabbit hole of negativity is what I want to call it, because due to some Instagram posts when I was in high school, I developed a really, really bad self-image, body image, you name it. And I did weightlifting my entire life. I was a college athlete for a little bit. And so even gym culture as well, people would be like, oh, your arms, like you look like a dude or whatever the case is. And it's just like, oh man. And so kind of taking that social media break, I mean, it was like, you know what, this is my body. This is all I got, and it's really helped me kind of say, everyone's body is different. We're all different. And we all kind of fake it for social media. And even now, as I've started like lifting again and trying to reteach myself, of course, then all my social media feeds has been about working out and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I don't look like those girls yet. What's going on with me? And it's like, no, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole again. Like, these girls are also beautiful, but so am I. Like, they're lifting, I'm lifting. We should be praising that instead of the differences in our bodies.
I love that, y'all. Thanks for sharing, especially because I know there's a nice following of weightlifters just in this group of presenters and moderators here. So it's really fascinating to see how discourses about men's and women's bodies are shifting, particularly in weightlifting spaces, right? I don't know if y'all have seen the new trend online where they're called muscle mommies. And now the idea is that women are starting to get super, super strong. And there's also interesting parallel conversations happening there too. So there's another question that we have from a viewer. Can you all identify a few concrete regulations you'd recommend beyond, say, just a disclaimer on a media ad or a TikTok video? Yeah, what kinds of concrete regulations would you recommend?
Good question. I need like 2 seconds to think about it.
I don't know, the wheels are kind of turning right now. Kind of my first idea is I wonder if Instagram can almost create a setting where it's like, do you want to see X, Y, and Z? So do you want to see girls' bikini pictures, or do you want to see red carpet photos? Or like, do you want, like, you could kind of pick the content you see. So then you won't see the Kardashians pull up on your follow feed, or you won't see this kind of stuff. It's just, you kind of get to pick and choose what you want to see. Like, yes, you could go and mute it, but I feel like when you mute something, they're just going to recommend like a different influencer who does the exact same thing. That's kind of like the first idea I had.
That made me think of, and I am not like a computer person, so I don't know how they create algorithms or whatever, but like a change to the algorithm, because it's like if you like look at one picture for like 30 seconds, it like triggers something and it's like, oh yeah, this is what you want to keep seeing. So it's like, let me just show you all the people that look exactly like the Kardashians or this mommy blogger. Yeah, I don't know if you would get rid of the algorithm or how you would change it, but just a way that like more voices and images are shown. Because like, I mean, there are like popular like BIPOC influencers, but I feel like my feed usually shows, I feel like the more famous ones that have more followings would be like the white, tan, blonde, you know, that kind of thing. So if there was a way to like make it more mixed, I think that would help my mental health.
No, I love this idea that Tyra brought up of kind of choosing your own. Because then I think it almost eliminates also like trying to take away the agency of someone else and their ability to like express themselves and edit their photos and everything like that. But you also get to choose what you consume and how you consume it, I guess. So I think that would be a very good thing.
So, as a fun follow-up curveball, do y'all think that age impacts your regulations at all, right? So, in other words, how do we understand some of the recommendations we're making for adult users, perhaps in relation to, say, teenage users between the ages of 13 and 17? And the reason I ask that now, I don't know if y'all saw an article that came out in the Trib last week and in other places that were talking about social media regulations on Instagram specifically for young viewers, particularly when thinking about body image issues and things of that nature. So yeah, how might the age of the user shape some of the regulations you would recommend?
Oh man, this is I can't stand influencer culture. I can't stand it. Especially when it comes to like the 13, 14, 15, like that age. If I could go back and just hug my 13-year-old self and be like, we're gonna be okay. Like, just because we are so impressionable to everything. Like we see a girl say this foundation is great. They're gonna go and buy that foundation and try to convince their parents, I need this right now because I need to look like other girls. And so I think as we get older, we kind of see the bull crap, part of my language, but we kind of see like, okay, not everything is what it seems, as we kind of grow through the internet culture. But I think as kids, we need to kind of protect them, because like one wrong post and they're gonna go down this rabbit hole. That's kind of what happened to me. And so I think just young, like, lost my train of thought again, but just kind of protecting them young. And then as they grow up, like, hey, as you go through social media, you are going to see these posts. You don't have to see these posts if you don't want to, but just so you're aware.
I had some friends, they just did this like business competition pitching an idea that would protect kids. And I can't remember if this is the exact idea that they pitched, but it was something like an Instagram specifically for kids. But the only problem is, like, when I was 14 and my mom's like, you're not allowed to have a Facebook, I still made one. And it's like, you have to be 16 or you have to be 18 or whatever. I just lied. Kids are smart. So it's like, oh, we could create like apps that are intentional for kids. But if we can't, like, kids are smart, they're going to find a way around it. I feel like in regards to age, I wonder if like whoever created the way to just scroll endlessly, that might just be another like algorithm kind of thing. Maybe if we could get rid of that, because that like Tyra just said, will send you down a rabbit hole for hours. I'm like, oh, I'm just checking one thing. 3 hours later, I'm like, why am I watching squirrels? Right? You know what I'm saying? It's crazy.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up age as well. And I love the comments that both Tyra and Hannah made. But in the study that was done that I talked about, they actually interviewed specifically like women like my age, like 23, you know, like that kind of age, because they knew right now was when we are at kind of like the peak of, well, right now and younger is when we're at the peak of our like realizing what we're supposed to look like, and though where our body like ideals kind of start to shape. And I think kind of going along with both of the other comments, I think it's almost impossible to entirely protect, especially in today's age, to entirely protect children or just younger teenagers from these images. I think the most effective way that we could, you know, help this situation is to talk about it and have these conversations about bodies and about, you know, the standards of beauty and the ideals that are just not actually like they're fabricated ideals, and they're, you know, these are people that have absolutely changed their bodies to look a certain way. They don't naturally look like that. And so I think that's definitely something that, you know, I think it just requires communication. It requires a conversation with all sorts of youth. And so Hannah's idea about, you know, starting young and kind of implementing it almost into our like curriculums, or, you know, just like having these conversations with and about technology specifically, I think would be very beneficial. And that would be a way to kind of fight against these ideals.
Thanks, y'all. So we have another question from a viewer, which dovetails with our current conversation nicely. And they ask, can you talk a bit more about advertising and how we can turn the corner on idealized body types dominating the airwaves?
I guess I'll go first on this one. Sorry, I bring social impact lenses to like everything that I do. But in regard to advertisement and marketing, I'm like, in an ideal world, it would be like more equitable and there would be more representation. But money really drives like every single system that we live under. And so, I mean, if we can all like go to school and get a better like framework and change our paradigms of the way that we see the world, and like us as like the future leaders of the next generation, like remember to bring these things into our workplaces, I think differences could happen. But also like the 1% that controls like a lot of the media and, you know, advocates for like what they want to be shown, I think it makes it really difficult. But I'm sure there are better answers and solutions.
Any other comments or questions before we wrap? Well, terrific. I just want to say thank you to each of you. There's a lot to talk about here, and a lot of these questions that you raised in today's session connect with things that have been raised in previous sessions, and there's a lot more to do and a lot more to think about. And I appreciate you contributing to this dialogue, and we look forward to following up with you in coming days and weeks, perhaps as questions come in from students around campus who would like to follow up with these things. So
Listen, Brian, if I may, can I make one announcement real quick?
Please.
Okay, so if you all are interested in learning more about any of the topics we've discussed today and or the relationship between media ethics and media literacy, please join us on Friday, April 21st from 6 to 7:30, where we will be having our Media Ethics in the Age of Misinformation student presented workshop. So our students from today will be presenting there, as well as other communication students in our media literacy courses, and it will be in CB 510. So we will have food, snacks, interactive discussion opportunities, and we would also like to thank the Center for the Study of Ethics and the Communication Department for co-sponsoring the event. So yeah, the conversations don't have to end now. Come join us then as well.
Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Stevie. This is great. And we look forward to getting the word out to students as the event gets closer. So again, thank you all. Look forward to 2 sessions coming up this afternoon, both of which are sponsored by our stellar UVU Ethics Bowl team.